Feel the people power and join us as we tackle the issues impacting our nation as we fight to protect our democracy in our multiracial, working-class world. Topics and issues at the top of your mind, the bottom of your wallet, and deep in your soul. Let's talk. Just Solutions on Free Speech TV.
Welcome to Just Solutions. I'm your host, Gloria Neal, and in any city across the United States, homelessness and what to do about it is a major issue. What can we do as a society? What should we do? Most major cities spend hundreds, if not millions of dollars every year. Matter of fact, most do spend millions of dollars. But those problems associated with homelessness do not seem to be getting any better. Is homelessness or chronic homelessness as we see it today solvable? And if it is, what is the solution? Well, we're going to talk about it today. My guest is Stephen with a PH, Hinkl. Very important to him. He is the public relations manager with the Denver Rescue Mission. Welcome so much. It's good to see you here, Stephen.
Hey, great to be here and great to know my name is Stephen with a PH.
That's exactly
Absolutely.
right. That's exactly. So if you see it wrong in the prompter, there's a problem.
That's right.
That's right. You know what, Stephen, Denver is like so many other big cities across the nation, all struggling with this challenge, all not knowing what to do. You're talking about unhoused, addiction, mental illness, and all that goes along with that. So is homelessness solvable?
Is homelessness solvable? Yes. To use an old cliche, you've heard people say when there's a problem, it might take a marathon effort to fix the issue.
Right.
I think at this point, what we're finding is it's going to be an ultra marathon effort at this point. And what is the solution? It's not so much what is the solution singular, but what is the solutions?
Correct.
Because there are many layers and the complexities to becoming homeless.
Right.
And then to becoming homeless to then becoming out of homelessness takes a multi-layered approach. So it's not just a solution, there are solutions problem to this whole thing.
Right. And so we are going to talk about some of those solutions, but we're also going to talk about some of the misconceptions, some of the stereotypes, and quite frankly, why this is everyone's problem, whether you are housed, whether you are wealthy, not wealthy, whether you are on the cusp of becoming homeless. All of those things encompass this. And while I don't expect to get to a solvable ta-da moment, right? But I do expect that we're going to explore, and I need you to be as honest as you want to be, to explore what is this issue underlying, realizing everybody's an individual. So let's start with some of the myths, okay? So I'm not going to start with some of the we know there's a problem. We'll get back to that. The myths around homelessness is?
One of the big myths that I would say is like, just get a job.
Yep.
And you know what? It's not that simple. Like, you can have a job and be homeless. It is certainly something we've experienced with guests at Denver Rescue Mission.
Right.
Some of our guests actually have jobs. But in a city like Denver or LA or Seattle or San Francisco, there are homeless individuals who have jobs, but because of the livable wage situation, they can't find themselves a good spot to live because they have that job, but they don't have a roof over their head because they can't find a place.
Right.
That is a big myth right now. It's like, just go get a job.
Right.
And the counter argument to that, and it is true, is people that use our services, at least from a Denver Rescue Mission perspective, do have jobs and are working their way out of homelessness. So it's not just as simple as the myth of, oh, just get a job.
Right. Another myth, go to a shelter. We have beds. Why don't you want to go to a shelter? You say what?
I would say there are people coming to our shelter and are trying to, quote unquote, rehab their lives, or lives, I should say.
Right.
Let's just speak to Denver for 1 second, and I'm going to speak specifically to Denver Rescue Mission. Right now, if you had to guess, how many people do you think we house right now on a nightly basis? What number do you think that would be?
I would think probably around 200 or 300.
We're serving about 1,200.
Oh, okay.
So we shelter about 1,200 individuals every single night in the greater Denver
area.
In
Okay,
greater
not
Denver
in
area.
because I've been to the rescue mission. I'm like, where are they sleeping?
Sure.
So around the city, not just in one spot. That's your housing.
Yeah.
That many. Okay.
So I would also say that 1,200 number also includes, we run a shelter in the northern Colorado area as well.
Okay.
So, but let's just speak specifically to Denver.
Okay.
It's about 1,000 individuals that we shelter on a nightly basis just in the Denver metro area.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Well, which brings me to this other piece about, how individuals who are in the process of being housed, and people will say, well, I don't want them to go there, or they say they don't want to go there because they don't feel safe. What is that?
I would say to people who don't feel safe, those are probably individuals, unfortunately, who may not even have used our services sometimes because we have full-time staff. And once again, I can only speak from Denver Rescue Mission perspective.
Right. Who stay there.
Who are there watching individuals and their property that they bring with them on themselves to make sure that it is as safe a situation as possible. Because in a shelter situation, it is certainly communal living.
Sure,
Like it
right.
definitely is. In their downtown location, the most well-known one that we have where it says Jesus Saves, we're right now sheltering about 230 people every single night.
So I was in the process.
So you're in the right spot for downtown. Correct, Gloria.
Right.
So, but to your point of come to our location. We will provide as safe an environment as we possibly can to make sure that you can start the process of getting yourself back up on your feet.
Right. And that is extremely important, that process to begin. Because let's face it, Denver Rescue Mission or any homeless facility, that is a comma, not a period. In other words, this is to help you. This is not your home per se.
Correct. We all have chapters in our lives.
Yeah.
Whether you've become homeless or whether I'm in high school for 4 years. Like everybody goes through chapters of their life.
Right.
And unfortunately, some people do find themselves homeless.
Right.
And we have to a certain extent, as employees and volunteers, to remind them, hey, we're here for you in your darkest valley.
Right.
Let us at least serve you a meal, and then you can start the process of getting back up on your feet.
Correct. That's absolutely right. And so do you find, dealing with another myth, do you find that you have those who say, yes, I do want to get back up on my feet, or I do want to go from this job and get a livable wage job so that I can get a place to live and so forth and so on, as opposed to, you know what, this is good enough, I'm going to stay?
I would say for the most part, we have a vast majority of individuals who understand that they are ready to get back up off on their feet. And that's probably the best way to say it at this point is on their feet.
Yeah.
Or, they want to get back from that valley back to the peak of, where they were previously.
Right.
People want to use our services because they want to get back to finding a quote unquote livable wage, get a permanent roof over their head. And for a lot of them, get a vehicle to, put their hands around so they can drive around and get to that job, or, create a community that can get them, back in a situation where they are pleased with where they are with their lives.
Right, and that makes all the difference. When you talk about getting back on their feet and getting back in that car and even having a social life.
Sure.
Right, that's all part of it as well. What would you say to those folks who say, yes, the majority of them, because I've heard you use the majority of them a lot, but we see the chronically homeless. We see, would you say, or is it too generalized to say, a lot of those are mentally ill, or they are drug addicted, or something of that nature that is causing that chronicness about their homelessness because they can't keep a job, they're not interested in keeping a job, or something is preventing them. They don't have a car, they don't have money, they don't have the means to get to that job. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. And the first illness, shall we say, is the mental health piece.
Yeah.
It has certainly become a major point of emphasis, society writ large, of how can we tackle the mental health crisis that we are experiencing. And it's not just for people who are unhoused, it's also the housed individuals as well. But to speak to the unhoused individuals, we need more community support to help people who are going through mental crises. And that could mean bringing in a professional to help talk to these individuals. Or maybe it's a volunteer coming in to talk to an individual to help them realize that, they don't have to be in the spot that they are currently in, and that they can persevere and they actually do have the strength to get out of that potential mental struggle that they're in. Same situation to a certain extent of, the idea of persevering through, an alcohol addiction or another substance abuse issue. There are services out there available to these individuals who are experiencing that.
But is there enough, and is it free?
It can be free, and for the most part it is. We have resources to give financial support to people who do need financial support to get assistance for addictions or mental health issues. We have people on our staffs, and I know that it's not only us, there are many other nonprofit providers in the Denver area who have individuals on staff who will meet with people who are willing to be healed.
So where is the disconnect? Where is there? No, I heard you, and that's great news. But if I'm at home watching this, I'm thinking, where is the disconnect? Why aren't they getting those services, or do they want to get those services? Why don't they know about those services? Or if they do, what's causing them not to get that?
I think the biggest thing is an individual, like anything else in life, you have to be willing to a certain extent to pick up your own bootstraps and persevere a little bit. Like there is a sense of like you have to take ownership for your life.
That's right.
And to your point about is the services available? Yes, they are. An individual then needs to realize the way that they're currently living is not the highest potential that they can live their lives.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
No, and it's not. Like, and that's why we're trying to at least help people with shelter. Don't stay on the streets. Let us at least show you the first step of like, you don't have to stay on the streets. We're going to give you a mattress to sleep on.
Right.
And then the next step is, baby steps, maybe a few days, weeks later, be like, let us help you sit down with this individual so they can at least give you some assistance in the process of getting back on your feet. I know it's a phrase that you're going to continually hear in our conversation, but that's really what it is.
It is, no question.
We as people who are working with the homeless really use this overarching word, and that's dignity. To give people dignity back in their lives.
That is so true.
And whether you're struggling with mental issues or substance abuse issues, or unfortunately you just became divorced and you lost your home through that divorce, we're going to do whatever we can to partner alongside with you to make sure that you can get the assistance that you need. But once again, it is going to be on that individual to a certain extent to help them understand that we can walk you to the next step of your life, but you have to be willing to take those steps to keep going and going and going.
And you guys become that support system, or organizations like the Denver Rescue Mission. And I know there are so many other organizations that are out there that are helping. Do you acknowledge that not every, and I know you can only speak for the Denver Rescue Mission, but you, just like I, have heard so many different stories about individuals who say that's just not safe for me and my kids, whether it's a male parent or a female parent, or a non-binary parent. It is so very important to acknowledge there are some situations where it's not safe for them to go into that environment, correct? Because I hear it all the time.
I would say this, if somebody feels like it's not safe, what is the best entry point to figure out, is that a barrier that you can't cross? Okay, so let's go there for a second. How about you start volunteering and just seeing what it's like firsthand to be around homeless people for 2 to 2.5 hours while you serve breakfast. And when you can, to a certain extent, make eye-to-eye contact with an individual who is experiencing homelessness, it helps you see it in a different lens, and it helps you realize that this is your neighbor. You might live in, say, Littleton, but you know what? Your neighbor is everybody writ large in the metro area. And when you can take just 2 hours of your life and serve an individual who is experiencing homelessness, it will definitely put a little bit of a mind shift in your brain that says, you know what? This is an individual who is struggling right now, and I can help assist them through that process. And that would actually potentially then lower the barrier of fear that you might have surrounding the whole idea of homelessness.
Right. Speaking of that fear, you think about any downtown anywhere across this country. You have the tents, you have the individuals who are staying out there. The law says you cannot make them accept services.
Correct. You
But the
can't.
law also says that you're not supposed to just lay in the street, lay in front of businesses, lay in front of residences. What to do about that?
That I would say would be a question. I do want to, let's address this first from like a Denver rescue mission
Okay.
stand. We are in charge of the sidewalks around us,
Mm-hmm.
just like you're in charge of the sidewalk and where you live. Our employees on a very regular basis very much encourage anybody who is sitting on the sidewalk, laying on the sidewalk, tenting on the sidewalk, to come into our courtyard.
Okay.
Or on a cold day, come into our dining room area where you can at least get warm.
Okay.
So I can speak from a Denver rescue mission standpoint that, like, yes, we are doing our best to help people get inside.
Yeah, that's good.
The next step is, it's a societal issue, but I would also say, like, people who are charged in public safety, and I don't necessarily mean just cops, you know, need to help to a certain extent with the process of, like, let's just remember this is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Let's do our best to treat people with dignity. Once again, that's a really key word in this whole process,
It is.
dignity.
It
To
is.
be like, hey, we understand that, you know, you might be an unhoused individual right now,
Right.
but can we recommend that you go stay at the Denver Rescue Mission community yard instead of standing in front of this business that is trying to sell,
Right.
you know, hamburgers or
whatever.
burritos or
Right.
whatever it is the case may be.
Right.
Yes, I believe that it does take a community to fix this issue.
No question.
And then, like, that's where I would say there is a certain, and I don't want to use law enforcement, but there are definitely some mental health experts who are starting to get more and more involved, and I think that's a really interesting tipping point to helping find a solution to
You
this
think that's
issue.
good?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I go back to,
So
like,
do I.
the mental health process of this issue that we're currently experiencing as a society is, I think, part of the solution to getting
Yeah.
people back to 100% full
Yeah.
health. Mental health is definitely something that is being addressed, and the sooner that I can get addressed even at a bigger scale,
Right.
I think that you'll find solutions not only in safety, but just the general happiness of the community you're a part of.
Right, right. Let's talk about that dignity.
Sure.
Do you think Denver shows, or even anywhere in the world, right? You can say, I mean, we're here in Denver, but I know you've lived in LA and San Fran, I mean, all of these places. I've been to New York, and all of these places where you see, do you think we show homelessness or deal with them in a dignified manner?
In general, I would say it's something of a mixed bag. You know, you don't want to throw too much of an umbrella of, like, over the whole situation. But when you treat somebody with dignity and you respect their processes and have a conversation with them and be like, listen, I know that you're allowed to have a tent, but if you could do it so it's not as effective, and have a conversation with a homeless person and not come at it from an authoritarian perspective, I think that would move an individual to actually be more receptive
Right.
to what you're actually asking them to do in the process.
Okay,
Just
so
coming through authoritarianly does not help anybody's
So
cause.
devil's advocate.
Oh boy.
If I am in my home
Okay.
and someone, or in my business, and a homeless person is camping there, and if I come out and I say, you know what, can you please move because my customers have a hard time getting here or whatever, and because what you are saying is that olive branch is extended of dignity,
We have to
right?
have that, yes.
That reciprocity has to also be extended from those who are homeless, saying, you know what, let me move now. That is great in this utopianistic society we have created, but in real life, you get a lot of pushback, combativeness, because homeless people have been hurt too.
For sure.
They have been disrespected, and they're ready for the fight, so they don't even give you a chance.
And the reason they've been ready for the fight, and let's go back to this for 1 second, I think it's because it's been police only who try to solve the issue. And that goes back to a certain level of, like, your power is over me and I'm gonna have to fight you now.
Right.
But when you bring the mental health professional, you know,
Correct.
into the process,
Correct.
they are trained to have a conversation of, like, rather than the homeless person ready for, you know, the cop or the police department to come out, they're actually realizing they can actually have a conversation. Listen, it is kind of utopian. I understand it. But I think that we are starting to learn as a society that
Right.
policing isn't
No.
always the best
No, it
method
isn't.
of solution to this issue.
That is correct. No, it is not. It can't be.
No.
Because police really aren't trained to do this.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And so you think about, we've created as a society so many resources, so many things at this problem. And so not getting any better. When you talk about solving homelessness, I always think of it more as one of managing homelessness, because it is a good revolving door that you, me, they say what? Most people are 2 or 3 paychecks away from being homeless.
Yeah.
So if there is a real process that has produced real results as it relates to homelessness, anybody, could be anybody, then shouldn't we try to come up with remedies that can be replicated across this nation that work?
Well, and this is the very interesting thing. Like, and I applaud, Mayor Kaufman from Aurora, who has gone to cities in Texas to see what they're doing.
Right.
And while I think replicating certain aspects of what different cities in this country are doing is extremely applaudable, you have to then tailor it to your specific city. Because we're not Houston, Texas, and Houston ain't Denver.
No.
So you have to find a way to how can we find that right mix of this is the best solution for Denver? Right. There are processes in place to get people out of homelessness. And I can speak specifically to individuals that I have met at Denver Rescue Mission who have gotten through our program, become what we would call a graduate of our program, and gotten back on their feet. They have a car to drive, they have a house, they have a job, they have relearned or learned life skills.
That's awesome.
And those services are there for them.
So how do we replicate
but
that?
how do we how do we help? And some of it is you have to help the individual, meet them where they are, and give them grace and care to show that they don't need to stay there.
That's right.
And that honestly is part of a major challenge as us who work in the industry, to help them understand there is something better on the other side.
Yeah.
You just don't have to stay in this hole or this spot or this valley that you're currently in.
Stephen, there are so many things and so many places we can go.
Sure.
I want you to take it from a business perspective. And as a business owner, what do you say to business owners in any downtown, whether it's Denver, whether it's New York, whether it's DC? What do you say when they're saying, you know what, I want to show compassion. I give and I give and I give, and it doesn't seem to be enough money. What do you say about people who want to throw money at it and that's it?
It takes more than, money is an aspect of fixing the problem. You can't do anything without money. You can't put a plate of chicken and rice on your dinner table without having some sort of money.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But to use my silly example, you still have to cook the chicken and rice on your stovetop.
That's right.
So while money is part of it, the human aspect, once again, you said some interesting attributes in there: compassion, dignity. And I would also throw one more in there: perseverance. Not only perseverance from the homeless person to keep overcoming the barriers that might be put in their way, but to the businesses, I would say, just keep showing compassion and keep showing grace, and then keep persevering through it. But I would also say, I'm not saying that needs to happen all the time. There are certainly issues when, unfortunately, 911 might have to get called, or a mental health professional needs to come to that specific location and assist with a potential problem. I am not saying that they should just let their windows be shattered or be harassed.
That's right.
I'm not saying that at all.
Because there's been some of that as well.
Unfortunately, true. And I would also say, roll up your sleeves to a certain extent and come volunteer, and just see what it's like at their home.
Yeah.
Because for some of the homeless people, their home is our shelters.
Right.
And, and come and meet them where they're at.
Right.
As much as they are coming to where you're at. It's complicated.
It is, because now again, and by the way, if you want to see previous episodes of this program, Just Solutions, go to our website, freespeechtv.com. Is it .com or .org? Got it. If you want to see previous episodes of this particular show, Just Solutions, just go to our website at freespeechtv.org, and that's fstv.org. org. Stephen, I know as we begin to wrap up today's program, because I could talk to you for hours, there's so much to unpack. If you start looking at, well, why is it that businesses or people are not compassionate? Is it because it is falling on not deaf ears, but certainly people who feel like, we're doing. But I too agree with you that money is not the answer. It's not just money.
It's not the sole answer.
It is. That's correct. That's correct. Money helps, but you need more than money to help get through this. And will this ever end? What do you say to people who say, I'm done, I've had it, but they need to give it another try to help?
I would say what you have to do at the end of the day is just either A, move on if you feel like, I persevered and it just wasn't that specific location, that wasn't the spot.
Right.
Unfortunately, I would say, sometimes you do have to just say, unfortunately, cut your losses and move on.
Yeah.
But to those who do persevere, I would say you're going to have a great victory on the other side of this, because you are going to be a part of a really beautiful solution. And the solution, like you said, you can have this conversation for hours.
Yeah.
And like I said at the start of the show, it's not a marathon.
No.
It's an ultra marathon.
It is an
really
ultra marathon, right? But one last thing on the businesses. For those people who say, well, these people, some of them are just choosing to do this, or they are just in this position. They're being lazy. They're not being productive. They're stopping clients or business people from coming in, customers. What do you say to them to say, you know what? That's not the case. Or if it is the case, how do you handle that?
If it is the case, once again, if a business owner or an individual walking, in downtown or any other parts of the metro area does feel unsafe, there are certainly solutions to, getting assistance in that manner. I want to make it very clear. Denver Rescue Mission, Stephen Hinkl does not want someone to try to take the law into their own hands. But I would say that, once again, this is still your neighbor,
right?
Right. And they, when treated with dignity, they can be shown to have a really big heart as well. And I would also say the last thing, I go to volunteering once again. It really is a good solution to help the community writ large understand what a homeless person is going through.
Okay. But as I wrap up, I also, because I don't want to give the impression that it's all homelessness and all of this. We do know that there are crimes being committed. We know there's drugs.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right. All of those things. That is something that's separate from what you were saying.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If a crime has taken place, there needs to be some sort of law enforcement in the process.
And that's also been a challenge. Right.
Yes.
That's been a challenge as well.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It has been wonderful. Thank you.
I could talk forever. Thank you.
I know. You are great. So you are definitely on the list. Definitely on the list. So when we start thinking about all of these particular challenges, and it is going to be with us a while, give me just one parting thought that people can hold on to and say, okay, I can do that.
It's a community effort. It's a community effort. Yeah. You have two hands. You have 2 feet. Be a part of the solution. Donate. Volunteer, be a part of the solution. And I think slowly, if the community really gets involved in this whole issue of homelessness, it can start turning a corner.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Gloria. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So, as I said, I'd like to thank my guest today. Stephen, he was wonderful. He is with the Denver Rescue Mission, and I am your host, Gloria Neal. Until next time, this is Just Solutions.